Hello, I am Sister Who. As a young man growing up in a small Germanic farming community in southern Wisconsin, I was a total anomaly. I sometimes joke with people that the stork must have gotten lost because there's no reason for me to have been born where I was, but I was. I knew I was different from the time I was 4, but I couldn't figure out what it was because being gay was so not talked about in the small town where I grew up that I didn't know what it was. You could have mentioned the word gay to me or homosexual, and I wouldn't have known what you were talking about, much less that it was actually referred to me. When I finally figured it out in my 20s, uh, it was this magical moment of, oh, well, now it all makes sense. Why didn't somebody tell me? But because I was different, I was this very creative young man. I was gay even though I didn't know what gay was, and so no matter what I did, there was no way I was going to fit in there. And I got teased and bullied a lot. I uh, got beat up by other kids on the school bus occasionally, and the way I coped with it was to find my own space and to decide that the world the bullies created for me was too small. I needed a bigger world. And so I decided that even didn't care if it was snowing, didn't care if it was 25 degrees below. I was going to ride my bicycle to school no matter what. And that's what I did from 3rd grade on. And it was pretty adverse circumstances, but I didn't have to deal with any bullies that way. I couldn't always get away from them though, of course, because at school they were still there. So even when I was riding my bicycle to school to avoid the bullies, there were still times on the playground and such, and it was difficult and it was rough, and there were a lot of times where I wondered if I wouldn't have been better off just saying this was a mistake. I need to get out of here and basically check out and go back to the spiritual realm and explain to God how I was born in the wrong place and this should not have been allowed to happen. And thankfully, I didn't make those choices. I was stubborn enough and strong-willed enough, I suppose, I don't really know what else to blame it on, that they created a small world for me, and I worked very hard my whole life finding the bigger world and looking toward the horizon, finding other possibilities for me. And when people said, these are your choices, these are your only choices, and I felt like I didn't have any options that fit, and I can't live within their choices because they don't fit. And I had, in some cases, I had to invent new choices. And so, and weaving things together that people wouldn't think to weave together. So from my 6 years in Catholic school, where I learned a lot of very good things from the nuns, and I have complete respect for them, I eventually, my interest in theater, my lifelong fascination with the spirituality, and my discovery of myself as a gay man all came together into the person that you see before you as Sister Who. I don't do any sacrilege or spoofing. Every detail of the costume and makeup has some sort of symbolism about it, and a lot of that has been my personal growth process of becoming a bigger person than the bullies ever knew that I was, and at the time than I ever knew that I was. It can be intensely difficult at times. And everyone is out there saying it gets better, it gets better. Well, in some ways it does. And in some ways life gets even more challenging and more difficult. And there will still be times when you feel overwhelmed. But what I try to remember in those moments is that I am bigger than any single experience of my life. That if I wanted to describe to you all of what I am, it cannot fit within any single moment. And a moment with a bully or a moment with an assault is not enough to invalidate the existence of all the rest. I am still bigger than that moment. The moment is the small things. It passes. It comes and it goes. It may hurt or it may feel good, but it passes, and there are other moments after it. And I started looking for all the ways that I could build all those other successive moments into bigger and more wonderful things than I ever thought possible when I was growing up in high school in this small town, with all these bullies telling me that they were more powerful than I was. And of course now I look back and laugh, because in retrospect the bullies were the weakest people in the entire high school, and the most fear-ridden people, and the most limited people. And if anything, I feel sorry for them, because to the best of my knowledge they really haven't become anything, and that is so sad. On the other hand, I started finding the me that was bigger than the corner in which I thought I was trapped. And I discovered that I wasn't trapped in that corner, and there was a bigger me than that moment. And that was the me that I needed to live for. And that me was not just me, but it was a self, a person who was in relationship to a bigger world. That it wasn't that it was all about me and I was the center of the universe. It was that I was a unique individual with a unique perspective and a creative impulse and a spirituality that wasn't quite like anybody else's, and it belonged. And the fact that I exist, the fact that God made me, is God's opinion that I do belong. And the bully's assertion that I didn't belong was nothing more than a reflection of how ignorant and short-sighted they were. So as the years have gone by, I grew up, I went to college. I even surprised myself a few years ago by going to graduate school and got a master's degree, and didn't know I could do that, but by showing up and being tough and refusing to give up. After a couple of years I finished, and they said, "Here's your degree," and I said, "You mean I did it?" I didn't realize I could, and each moment through I wasn't sure if I would make it, and then the day came where I had accomplished it. In a similar sort of way, I now live in Colorado, and I really enjoy hiking the mountains out here. And in fact, I decided to take my creativity and my spirituality and my enjoyment of the mountains and put them all together. And so in full costume and makeup, at this point, I've now climbed 14 of Colorado's 14ers. A 14er, by the way, is a mountain that reaches above 14,000 feet. Colorado is sometimes called the roof of North America because we have 54 of them in this state, more than any other area of North America. But 14 times now, Sister Who has been on the summit of a 14er, high up on this mountain. And it's a long ways to hike. And like life, it's about putting one foot in front of the other. And if I stumble over a rock at this point, I get up and I keep going. And I do not give up, and I will not quit, except for bad weather, until I get to the top. I mean, you want to be wise, and you want to be loving toward yourself, and you want to be loving toward the people you meet along the trail. When a storm cloud comes in, it's time to get down, because above tree line, there's nothing to hide behind when the thunder and lightning get close. But even with that possibility, on 14 occasions, the weather cooperated, and I made it all the way to the summit. And there's something about being on top of a mountain that changes your perspective for the rest of your life. So if you ever want to come to Colorado and go hiking with me, June, July, and August are usually the best months. And I would love to have you along. We can go hike a 14er together and perhaps give you a new perspective on life. Because from the top of a mountain, everything down there looks small. And it's so pure and uncomplicated, and there's no judgment. You get to be whoever and whatever you are. You get to be you. And there's so many wonderful mountains to climb, and so many beautiful things to see, and so many horizons. And each time you make it to a horizon, there's another one that you can pursue. There's so much more to you. Each person is a care package from God, and we don't always know what to do with all the items we find inside the care package. But until we open the box and begin to take the objects out into the light and to share them, we don't know what potential they have. I am absolutely certain that there are wonderful things hidden inside of you that you may not even know about yet. Things that will only show themselves as your life continues. And I ask you to give them a chance, to be stubborn, to stick it out, to go for the world that is bigger than the world that the bullies have created for you, and to know that you are bigger than them. And as time goes on, more and more wonderful things will happen, and it will get better in the biggest sense of the word. And I welcome the opportunity if you want to come hiking mountains with me. It's quite a challenge. It can be done by putting one foot in front of the other and not giving up. It really does get better.